Hey everybody, I hope you guys are doing well. So I don't know if you peeped this, but I certainly did, that the world has pretty much moved on from the conversation of Lil Boosie. And I suspect that celebrities kind of know that this is how it happens. They get dragged for a few days, and I think the shelf life of any kind of big story is probably 3 days, and then folks move on to something else. Like the world simply just has like ADHD. They just move the hell on to something else that has, the little shiny little thing dangling over there. They go look over there. And then, that person that was dragged, like a little Boosie, who really does have a serious issue that we're dealing with right now, or should be talked about, gets to move on and do what he does, and then he'll say something and it'll be funny, and then people will love Lil Boosie again. That's just the way the world works. It's unfortunate, but that's just how the world works. Now, Lil Boosie was dragged, rightfully so, when this clip went viral, which I don't think it was new. I don't think it was a new clip, but it went viral basically saying pretty much in his words, like, he lets a grown-ass woman suck on him, his son, and his nephew. He don't want his son and nephew being gay, so he get a woman to go ahead and top him off, and, it's all cool. And, pretty much. I don't even want to, repeat all the other vulgar stuff he said, but that's the gist of it, and that's why people were dragging him and talking about Lil Boosie. Now, I have to tell you, not everybody was talking about him in a negative light. A lot of people were agreeing with him, which is why I was giving some folks the side eye. But I'm glad that this happened because it definitely exposed how some folks actually think. It definitely exposed, and it wasn't all men who were taking up for Boosie. I need you to know that. If you looked at any of the comments out there while this was going on, women were taking up for Lil Boosie. Matter of fact, one of my Facebook friends I went to high school with, she said something along the lines of, well, people did that. People have been doing that forever. It's just that he shouldn't have put it out there. He shouldn't have said it. And then people were agreeing with her. Now, I do agree that people have probably doing that forever. That doesn't make it right. But I had to give her the side eye because her tone and the way she was kind of wording it, and in some of her comments made me feel that she was agreeing with him and she didn't understand why people were coming down on him. And like I said, I saw a lot of that. And that just kind of like, need to watch your kids around people like that. If you agree with that, you need, or somebody that agree with what he did and how he did it, you might want to check your, I don't know about you. That kind of thinking, I ain't really rocking with that. That's my opinion. All right. But there's a lot of people that agree with Lil Boosie. Now, Boosie had a few things as a result of this. I don't know if it's the result of it, but the consequences of being out in the public for something that you said or did kind of brought up other issues. He had some kind of back and forth with Webby, which they used to be like tight. And one of his baby mothers, mother of his child, the little girl's name, Lyric Beyonce. Now, that was a whole nother conversation all over social media, Lyric Beyonce. But we ain't going to sit here and drag this baby's name. That ain't her fault that her name is Lyric Beyonce. But anyway, one of his baby mothers is suing him. The state's attorney, the attorney general of Louisiana, is coming after Boosie, saying that he isn't living up to his financial responsibilities with his daughter, and they are coming after him. Okay. Which is kind of interesting because Boosie always on his IG Live trying to give out $1,000 to any of these little thirsty little rat head girls who will show their lip lips to him. So I just found it interesting that he got all the money in the world for that, but not his kid. Now, that being said, I am showing you some tweets of people that were agreeing with Boosie. And I thought it was interesting because I just think, and I said this in my first video, people would have a completely different take on this if this was a girl. If this was a girl that was being taken advantage of, if somebody was like a father got online and said, hey, I'm breaking my daughter in, I got this older man to come over here, people would lose their shit. If a woman said that, they would lose their shit. I remember about a week ago, there was a mother who was like practicing or having her little daughter swing around on her stripper pole in her house. And the mother was defending herself like, no, this, she just play with it. It's just exercise. And people was threatening to call CPS on the mama for this very thing. And here we have Boosie, who, again, people are attempting to defending the indefensible. You can't defend what he did. And I don't know how you can. I just don't know how you can defend a man letting grown-ass women put their mouth on their sons. Now, it's not new. It probably has been happening for a long time. And matter of fact, you'll hear people say, well, that's a boy's dream. A boy's dream is for a older woman to come and do that. That doesn't mean it's right. That's still rape. And the woman needs to be put and locked under the jail. If you're going to lock up R. Kelly, lock up these little women predators too. Because it's a mess. It's a whole mess. And it's not right. And it's traumatic. And people don't understand that you might think that your son is cool with it and everything is great with it. But you might want to think about R. Kelly for a second. And I know everybody ain't sitting around thinking about R. Kelly, but I want you to think about something he said. R. Kelly said something that stuck with me. He said that he was molested by older women. He was molested by older women. Not just, he also alleges that his sister or his brother actually says that his sister molested R. Kelly as well. But before the whole sister conversation came up, R. Kelly said it out of his own mouth that older women used to sexually touch him. And you have to think about a young child trying to wrestle with those feelings of, as a young boy, maybe being aroused, knowing that it's wrong, but your body takes over, right? And how that might have fucked him up in the brain to the point now where I have always theorized that R. Kelly hates women. I think that he truly hates women. And hear me out on this. I think that the trauma that man suffered, and it doesn't excuse what he's done, right? But the trauma that this man has suffered, he takes it out on women. I believe a lot of the shit that has happened, as far as like him withholding food and him doing what he's done to them, I think that this is a manifestation of abuse that happened to him at a young age. And that's not to say that every young man who is sexually abused grows up to be an R. Kelly. I am not saying that. But we have an example of what that kind of sexual molestation and abuse does to a man. Do you recall Lil Wayne said something similar about some woman sucked on him when he was young? And I would sit here and say that Lil Wayne doesn't have much respect for women. They are objects to him. So this has consequences. Whether you want to believe it or not, this has consequences. And the way Boosie moves and some of the stuff he says makes me think that somebody did it to him. For him to think it's normal and to normalize it makes me think that it indeed happened to him, that somebody touched him too. Because he seems a bit obsessed with certain things. If you've ever just listened to him, some of the stuff he said, his stint in prison and stuff like that, you got to wonder about Boosie sometimes. And I certainly sit here and think to myself like, Lil Boosie only sees women as objects. Lil Boosie has many kids with many different women, which could certainly, I think there's pathology in a lot of things that we see. When we see a lot of stuff play out, you have to go back and look at the pathology of it. Not just blast somebody and drag somebody for how they act because of their behaviors, but you have to think about where did the behavior come from in the first place, because it started somewhere. It didn't just pop out of thin air. This behavior started somewhere. So it is possible that Boosie himself has experienced some kind of sexual trauma as a young boy, right? And now he is indeed putting that on his sons, but he would never do that to his daughters. He would never. I can imagine, right? He would get a shotgun when it came to his daughters, but when his sons, it's okay. And that just shows you that young black boys are not protected. We already knew that black girls weren't protected, but young black boys aren't protected. We just think it's okay. Like, oh yeah, that'll make him a man. I'm sure he'll love it. He loves it. Why wouldn't the boy love to have a grown ass woman sucking all over him? Because it's wrong. It's rape. And what it does is it does something different to every person. It does something different to every single person. No two people are alike. And maybe when they grow up, it may manifest itself in different ways. But I don't believe that it doesn't come out in some way or another. And young men who are probably taken advantage of sexually probably grow up with issues, just like young women grow up with issues when they are sexually molested. I don't think one person that has been touched or molested doesn't grow up with something going on. And I speak from personal experience. You have to work through that. You have to deal with that. It may be just the way it manifests itself in your own personal relationships and how you relate to people. How some people grow up and they can't technically keep a relationship because of the trauma that they faced in their childhood. But I just want to say, as soon as I thought about this young Boosie stuff, I said, well, shit, that's R. Kelly's story. Being sexually molested as a young man and not having any control over that. And then it manifested itself into some shit. And he didn't, he made some choices out there that he got to live with those consequences of the choices that he made because he never got any help for that. But again, probably growing up thinking that was okay and that was normal, right? But you can't convince me for a second that R. Kelly don't hate women. And I think that came from, he could sing all the songs all he wanted and all the love songs, but you can't convince me that this man don't have some kind of mental fucked upness. I know that ain't no word, but because of what happened to him as a kid. And so Boosie really needs to think about that. Now, the damage is done, right? The damage is done as far as his young boys being, having their virginity taken or however it went, because I'm sure they probably have, engaged in sexual activity as well. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I hope that the conversation becomes like, we need to start to have a conversation about young boys and their own sexual trauma. We've been talking a little bit more about girls, but we need to start talking about boys more. And I was hoping that this conversation or what happened would spark that conversation. But then, like I said, I see all these tweets pretty much justifying what Boosie did and trying to equate, how women walk around dressed to what he did with his young sons, or trying to equate what Dwayne Wade did with his child with what Boosie does with his child. I don't see the comparison, but when people say, stop minding his business, get out of his business. Well, Boosie shared it. So just like Dwayne Wade shared his. So people are going to have an opinion if it's shared and it's put out there in the public. You can't expect people not to talk about it. You can't expect people to be like, oh, well, yeah, we're not going to. No. You're going to have to expect that people are going to have an opinion about stuff if it's out there publicly. But I feel like Boosie has definitely opened a can of worms. And like I said, if people can call CPS on a mama for letting her daughter, her little young child, climb up a stripper pole, because we didn't see the little girl doing any dances or something. We just saw her climbing up the stripper pole, and people was like, oh, you need your kid taken away. They was quick to jump on her. But Lil Boosie, people have moved on from it. And furthermore, I'm not surprised one bit that all these rappers have been radio silent on this whole thing. You ain't heard shit out of them. No, they not obligated to speak on that, but they speak on everything else. Hell, Snoop Dogg is still, probably right now, still going back and forth with Tekashi over some bullshit. And not once do you hear when Gayle King said what she with the whole Kobe thing, he was quick to come out there. You ain't heard nothing from these dudes about Boosie being wrong for what he was doing, because it's possible that they indeed probably had it happen to them. And so maybe they can't speak on that, or they don't feel like they can speak on it because maybe they have engaged in that kind of stuff and they don't know how to articulate their thoughts, or maybe it's like they don't think anything wrong with it, but they have been quite silent on it. And that's quite loud to me when you have people that have been very, very vocal about everything else, but won't say shit about what Boosie has done to his nephew and his son. It's quite telling, quite telling. But I don't want this conversation to die simply because Twitter is over it and Twitter moved on to another story and social media has gone on with another story, because Boosie's still going to go back and he's going to engage in the same kind of behavior. Again, he don't think there's anything wrong with what he did. His peers won't call him out on it. And, the trauma of young boys will continue because people don't want to discuss it. People don't want to talk about it. This is something that we, as a Black community, we got to talk about. We've got to discuss this. We've got to talk about these kind of things so that they don't keep repeating themselves, because these young men do grow up to go out in the world and they could indeed be predators. I'm not saying that they will, but I'm saying they could turn into predators because of this very thing. They could grow up to disrespect women and look at women as objects like Boosie does. I mean, it's not far off. It's not far-fetched. It's not. So I just hope that we can engage in more conversations like this. But like I said, I ain't forgot. I know the world has moved on, but I ain't forgot about it. I still want to talk about it. Okay. And I will, as long as I want to. And if you ain't interested, then this ain't the channel for you. All right. So I'll see you guys on the next video.